Oh boy, election night in America.
Here it is.
Very excited. This is November 8th we're recording for. The big election is coming up. It's Bush v. Gore. Maggie's a big Ralph Nader guy.
That's not true at all.
This Al Gore fella, he's campaigning on this new thing called the internet. And Bush he's campaigning on his last name. So it should be it should be a tight race, but
yeah.
Florida seems to be locked up for the Democrats.
Yeah, they're all set. Now, can you remind me what the internet, what's the deal with the internet?
I don't know. I got a floppy disk in the mail the other day from something called AOL. I threw it away.
Seems wrong.
I threw it in the microwave first just so it didn't have my information.
Sure, that's really smart.
But
now, the thing that actually, you said, I'm a little hesitant on Al Gore because he keeps talking about this thing called global warming.
Right.
It's cold here today.
But
so what's up with that?
Did his internet cause that?
That's a good point.
From people putting the floppy disks in the microwave,
Seriously,
that's going to warm up.
That's going to do it.
If everyone does that at the same time, the temperature goes up a degree or two.
Listen, I'm all for Al Gore here, but I'm a little worried that he's not quite appealing to people in the right way.
You have a Ralph Nader tattoo. What do you mean you're all for Al Gore?
I'm trying to keep it subtle, but I guess if I've got the tattoo literally on my forehead, then I don't.
And the other day you were saying you really like the Bush idea because you just miss when America had political dynasties.
I do miss that.
You'd
that
like
was
us
a
to
good
get
time.
back to the Kennedy days.
I'm also from Texas down here, so I mean,
right.
There's that connection. So,
but I'm suspicious of this internet thing.
I'm a little suspicious, yeah.
Well, let's just write in Ralph Nader and see what happens.
I think it's going to go great. Florida's in the bag, though.
Well, of course, this is Second Breakfast with Cam and Maggie celebrating the year of 1999. Today we're discussing the Blair Witch Project, the hour and 21-minute horror movie that revolutionized the world. This movie, for a little bit of context, is it popularized the found footage thing.
It did.
Really changed horror. I think it kickstarted that indie, scrappy, micro-budget horror blaze that ran through the mid-2010s and really hit when you and I were coming into our own culturally and learning about things like horror.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this movie was the reason that Al Gore lost?
Sure.
Can we blame it on this movie? It troubled the American people too much, and they said, I don't want to save the forest. Fuck the forest.
Let's warm it by burning it down.
Yeah, burn it all.
So Blair Witch was shot in 8 days. It was edited in 8 months, and we'll get into why it took so long. It was shot
that's a long time.
It was shot in a very unconventional way.
Yes, I do know that.
So the movie was made for, estimates vary, but it was between $20,000 and $60,000. Once it was picked up by a studio, there were some reshoots, which might have inflated that budget. But regardless, it made $250 million. So that's it. For a time, it was the most successful film of all time, meaning return on investment. It had the largest multiplier, basically. And I had never seen this. You saw it a couple years ago, and I was always wary just because of the found footage thing. Why were you so excited to share this with me and talk about it?
Well, just because it's a cultural touchstone. I mean, it's like being excited to show somebody Halloween for the first time, like trying to show them like the not the first slasher, but like the ultimate, like the cornerstone slasher. And so that's how this felt for found footage. And I know you loved Paranormal Activity, and we just recently watched Hell House LLC, which is a found footage thing. And you had seen, we watched Lake Mungo over the summer, which we covered in our Summerween series. But I know you were a fan of found footage and of low-budget, scrappy, creative horror. And so I really thought you were going to like it. And I knew Cam has been hesitant about some found footage because it can make him feel like seasick, basically. But I was like, this one's not that shaky. I mean, there are shaky moments, but it's not like As Above, So Below is another great found footage, but it's very shaky. And I don't think you could handle that one as well. But I was just really excited for you to experience the creativity really in this movie.
Yeah, my big takeaway from the found footage in this film, I wasn't bothered by it at all, and it provided an unexpected level of immersion. Like you said, or it sort of alluded to, my previous experience with the format is the second Bourne movie, The Bourne Supremacy, which
shaky.
has that half-hour-long car chase, which is mostly shaky, handheld, very impacty.
Yeah.
And there's a headache factor to watching that.
Also the first Hunger Games movie. There's a lot of shaky cam in that.
And I feel like in those movies, when it's used for certain sequences to show the chaotic nature of whatever's happening, it becomes a flourish of texture especially with all the car accidents in Born Supremacy. But Blair Witch didn't treat it like that. It was a medium that it was working in. And the medium of found footage, and this might be the first movie I've ever really seen in that dedicated medium, has its own unique storytelling limitations and opportunities. And these were the things I didn't anticipate. The first big one was intentionality.
Yeah.
Those hard stops when the characters aren't choosing to document what's happening, it makes the film a tapestry of these characters' interests.
Yeah.
Like it does the editing for them. So it becomes this greatest hits. And you get, when it jumps from them saying hello to them in the car driving to the location to them filming the first thing that's interesting.
Yeah.
That does the editing work for you.
Yeah.
It evolves past sort of the pacing concerns where you have to use these sleight of hand tricks to skip time and traveling because the medium just doesn't pay attention to that.
Yeah, because that's how you would do it, is you wouldn't film yourself getting into the car. You would like film a clip in the car and then just stop. And then, especially because they were filming this, the premise is they're filming this to create a documentary. So there are a lot of scenes in this footage that you can tell are not meant to be included in the final cut. It's just, okay, we've started rolling, let's get going. And then there's a little extra on the end that's not meant to be in the final edit. But of course it is in this film version.
I think I was expecting, because it's only an hour and 20 minutes and it was made with no budget, I was expecting it to be a lot of longer scenes with kind of built up scares. So really it would only be 6 or 7 things in the movie stretched out to fill that time. But it was the opposite. If anything, it was way more scenes than most horror movies have.
Yeah.
And those jumps, those kind of jarring accelerations were so immersive for me.
Yeah.
Like the ending scene gets a lot of credit for being the jump, for being sort of the freaky thing that this adds to the horror canon. But those late night cuts were the MVP for me in this movie.
Yeah, they're pretty
For example, like the shift from late afternoon to the pitch black shaky night, when you go from, all right, let's wind down, set up the tent, and then click, it goes to them in the middle of the night shaking because they heard a noise outside.
Yeah, it's not like you don't see them going to bed. You don't see the start of the thing because they never start filming before the thing happens. It's always in the middle.
And for me, that captured sort of an adrenaline suddenness that I've never really seen on screen. It almost tapped into this lizard brain, like your reaction time. The way you turn around when you hear a noise. It felt like this medium does that for you.
Yeah.
So you feel that much more immersed in the characters. You're basically seeing the movie from a first-person perspective.
Yeah.
But also with that attention span and rigidity. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah.
And that, like, taken together, there's an efficiency of plot. Because, like we said, you sidestep any of the downtime or monotony of the little things that you just tune out. Like, every time we leave the apartment, I don't think about locking the door. I don't think about seeing if Maggie locked the door. But as I'm walking down the stairs, I think, did I lock the door?
Right.
But it's become such autopilot that you don't pay attention to it.
Right.
I like that this medium lets you skip right over the autopilot things unless they're relevant.
Yeah.
Like there's that bit of narrativity.
Yeah.
Of like,
yeah, there is.
You see someone drop the map or something in the background because it's going to be relevant later.
What's great is we don't actually see them drop the map, do we? I don't think we do.
But
no, I'm just saying that's even cooler is like you don't even
you see the
it.
frustrations
like,
built.
Yeah, right. Especially because so much of this is from Heather's point of view because she's the one holding the camera. And so she doesn't see them drop the map, so we don't see it.
But that rigid sort of attention span, because it's someone pointing a camera at something, it really heightens any of the extended scenes. When you see them get lost in the woods, the hiking, like all of that extra movement and bickering, all of those cuts as they go through, oh, it's more trees, it's more leaves, it's more trees, it's more leaves.
Yeah. Because
it's not just a static camera watching people move smoothly, it makes the woods feel that much more labyrinthine.
Yes, they feel like I don't, it's like how I feel in a game that's first person like that. Like I have no idea where I'm going and I have no sense of direction because I only see like what's on the screen and I can't see around me and I feel very disoriented.
I think a good comparison here is how Mirkwood feels in the Hobbit movies.
Yeah.
Because that is shot more clearly. On good cameras, things are more static and calm.
There's a beautiful set, yeah.
So you have to release like these gases and make people swoon and look all woozy to show that they're going in circles.
Right.
But here it happens really naturally. The forest feels unnaturally alive. You believe, I mean, you start to tap into this belief that the forest is trapping them.
Yes.
That it's turning them around and almost rearranging itself to follow wherever they're walking.
Yes.
And when they run into the same log again for the second time,
to cross that stream,
it doesn't seem like, oh, they ran out of money, so they just hit the same location again.
No, it's a very intentional
It
story
absolutely
choice.
serves the story.
Yes.
None of this would really work if this was a 4K statically shot movie with written dialogue. If it had the polish of like a AAA movie. The footage being on like borrowed, stolen Circuit City cameras and them adding in the grain later. Like they returned one of the cameras after they filmed.
Yeah.
And they added in the grain afterwards. The more you do that, the more DIY this is, the more overwhelmed the characters are, the more lost they get. I think the better the movie is.
I totally agree.
And I love that it went from setup, premise, them getting lost, and then half an hour of them getting really lost.
Yeah.
So by the time the scary stuff starts, there's already so much character tension.
Yes.
It's that great thing that all the horror movies you and I love have that restraint. When no one dies, nothing really bad happens for the first hour, and that build-up makes everything else gravy.
Yes, and there's all this tension build up between the characters throughout that first hour, but it's not to do with any of the scary stuff. It's just natural dynamics that are shared between people who spend a long period of time isolated together. So it's like them being annoyed that Heather wants to film extra shots. It's being annoyed about the camping. It's bickering when you're hungry, you're tired. Or like having different opinions about how to use the map. Like it's simple things like that happen even when there's not a supernatural phenomenon going on.
And all of that feels so realistic. There's an astonishing realism to this film.
Incredible, yeah.
And a lot of that was built into the incredibly unusual style of production, where all of the lines are improvised.
Yeah.
They would give a loose outline of what was supposed to happen, where they're supposed to go, and then just leave it up to the actors, who basically stayed in character together. So if someone needed a break, they all took a break. But besides that, they were all in.
Yeah.
But the actors didn't know some of the events that were going to happen. They would find out oftentimes on camera.
Yeah.
They had to sign this, quote, mess with your head contract.
Oh, God.
That gave the filmmakers permission for that late night tent attack, which they weren't warned about.
That's the coolest thing. I mean, it's awful, but it's so interesting.
And it makes those responses genuine.
Yeah.
Like each day of the shoot, they would get GPS and coordinates with a crate. And the crate had notes, kind of notes about the previous day's filming and notes about where to go today. It would have food and some supplies.
Yeah.
They would take all of that stuff and leave yesterday's footage. That was sort of the deal as you go through the shoot.
Wow.
And the frustration of them walking all day for nothing was real.
Yeah.
That was something that filmmakers just set up for them. Their fights were genuine. At the beginning, when they were interviewing those townspeople, the actors didn't know that those people were plants. That they were actors.
Cool.
So the actors thought that the locals believed in the Blair Witch mythos.
Shit. Wow.
Which again heightens all of that fear later.
Interesting.
But like we said, if you have an hour of setup, in a good way, an hour of building character before the real scary shit starts, then if you only have an hour and 20 minutes in your movie, and some of that is credits, that last bit has to be phenomenal.
Right.
And that's where this film also really shines.
Yeah.
So I want to...
Sorry, that production style thing, I feel like that could be a really cool paid tourist experience. Like, do the Blair Witch scavenger hunt. We give you supplies and every day. Right. Like, that would be so interesting. I mean, I would never do that. That's like the worst idea. Like an escape room. Exactly. Like an outdoor escape room, basically.
Almost like a VR escape room.
Yeah.
That would be a cool setup.
Yeah, like do the Blair Witch production experiment and sign the mess with your head contract and all that. Sorry, that would just be so wild. I didn't know that thing about the people at the beginning. That's really interesting. I mean, obviously I assume the actors are in character when they're asking those questions, and maybe those questions were somewhat scripted, but the reactions, that's pretty cool.
And that mess with your head thing really happens anyway. I mean, every time you tell an actor, all right, the scare is going to come from this direction, we're going to count to 3, and then we're going to do it. They always do it on 2 because you want to get the organic reaction. You throw in stuff anyway. But
and also in the I don't know if you were going to talk about this later, but when Josh disappears, the other 2 actors didn't know that Josh was going to disappear, so they genuinely were like, "Where the fuck is Josh?" That's so freaky.
Yeah,
and it's hard to like imagine what that was like for the actors because they know it's a movie, like they know that they're acting and that it's fake.
But that doesn't mean freaky stuff can't happen in the woods.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be the Blair Witch. It could just be people screwing with you outside.
Yeah, or it could be animals, or, you know.
Right. And they were playing sounds on boom boxes. They were banging on the outside of it. There was one guy dressed up running through the woods after them.
Gosh, wow.
And they almost showed some of those shots, but they decided not to. And that's a good transition into the end here, which is how the movie ends. Yeah. Where you have the death of all the principal characters, but you don't ever see the witch.
Yeah.
How did that hit you the first time you watched this?
I really am trying to remember if I knew about that before watching it. Because, you know, this movie's been around for over 20 years, and I only saw it probably 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I knew a lot about the movie already. I knew about the fake ad campaign, and people thought it was a real movie and that people were really missing and all that. But, you know, I don't think I did know if you saw her or not. And I was a little disappointed that you don't see anything, but also I love restraint in a horror movie, and I like that so much about this movie is imagination. Like, it's you trying to fill in the blanks in the dark, because that's what the human brain naturally does.
Right.
When there's a blank space, either figuratively or literally, physically, you try to fill it in with your imagination. And that's what's happening to these characters in this story, is they are imagining what this Blair Witch might look like and what's happening in the dark beyond what they can see. And so we're led to do that as well. So I like it. I think the ending is a little underwhelming, but I also think it really works for the movie.
Right. It's not satisfying in as simple a way as most horror movies are. Yeah. Especially the ones, and I usually prefer these, when you just ground the heroes into the dirt and show the bad guy winning. Yeah. I like that a lot. Sure. But, I mean, we just rewatched Cabin in the Woods. That one ends and they show you the bad guy. Uh-huh. That's not a better ending than this.
No, that ending is bad.
This one's spooky and indirect. Mm-hmm. And the indirectness, like, initially, I totally agree with you. I felt disappointment because creature design is such a core part of horror. And the movies we've seen in the last couple of years that have had great creature design entered this pantheon of great horror. I mean, you can't imagine Terrifier without Art the Clown. You can't imagine The Thing without any of those prosthetics.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, since this movie, we've had over 20 years of really freaky creature design in horror movies. Not that there wasn't pre-99, but we've had a lot since then. Mm-hmm. And we show more in horror movies now than I think we did back then.
Yes.
And so our 2022 brains are we want to see more. So it's a little disappointing, but you also get it.
I agree with you that I can get on board with not seeing the thing directly. Mm-hmm. It being more of an atmospheric, moody, mysterious kind of Lovecraft style thing where you don't really see or understand the big spooky thing. I mean, you mentioned Paranormal Activity earlier. It operates with the same principle. Yeah. But the question that I developed as I was writing out these notes, I think we might see the witch indirectly.
Okay.
And I kind of spitballed this to you after we finished watching the movie, but I think the witch is the one holding the camera at the end.
Yes, I didn't catch that, I think, until I watched it this second time.
So let me lay that out a little. Mm-hmm. The idea goes, and this is just, I mean, I just came up with this while the credits were rolling, that the witch picks up the camera after Mike drops it. So Mike is, he has the camera, he's running in the basement, and then we see him standing in the corner. Mm-hmm. So he's not holding the camera anymore. Yeah. So I think the witch picks up the camera after Mike drops it, walks over and shows him standing there, and then drops it because Heather comes down looking for Mike. So the witch drops the camera to kill Heather.
Great, yeah. Because at first you think, oh, well, it's Heather carrying the camera because they both had cameras and Mike is gone, so it must be Heather. But you hear her screaming, and it sounds like she's on the other side of the house. But then you see it dropped at the end. You think, oh, well, Heather was holding it. The witch found her, and Heather dropped it. But I think you're right. It's the witch carrying it.
And that accomplishes a lot of it answers a lot of questions without giving you the satisfaction you were looking for. Mm-hmm. Like, according to the lore, which is mentioned at the beginning in the title cards of the film, the tapes are found in the house. Neatly packaged up.
Yes.
Which means that whatever killed them, presumably the witch, packaged them and delivered them to be found. Yeah. So there is an intentionality to that. It's not just this wild creature running through the woods. There's a lore and a logic to it. Mm. So why would the witch film Mike dying and box up the footage to be found? I think the only explanation is to lure in the next victim.
Yeah.
Because the setup, sort of the deal, that the witch has with this place is a long-time food supply of wandering locals and investigative dummies like these three.
People trying to figure out, like, you can tell that she wants to keep that lore and legend and curiosity about the Blair Witch alive, so that more people will come in like that.
And even if there isn't that level of logic where the witch sees a camera, knows what a camera is, and decides to film, even without that, maybe it just picks up this weird device with a light on it out of curiosity and drops it because food arrives.
Yes.
Because Heather walks in.
Yes, right. And I think also, I'm thinking now, the camera pans to Mike in the corner. And so that's why you think Heather's the one using the camera, because she's also using it as a flashlight. I think the witch is maybe showing Heather, pointing, basically putting a spotlight on Mike to say he's here. Also,
the camera moves so smoothly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you saw your friend just gone over to the dark side over there in the corner, you wouldn't be holding the camera perfectly smoothly for the first time all movie.
And she's like running for her life. So at this point, I don't think Heather cares a lot about getting her footage, but I don't think she cares at this point. So she's not trying to film the house. She's just trying to get out. So yeah.
And regardless of those explanations or sort of hypotheses, showing Mike turned at the end of the movie is confirmation that the witch is real and that all of this stuff is happening.
Yes.
You don't need to see the witch to be validated on all that.
Exactly.
And I like the idea, because this whole movie is a camera pointed at three people, that you can show the witch without showing the witch. I like that you're obeying that scrappy limitation that we sort of signed up for and showing us this horrible thing. It empowers our imagination more than it does whatever $40 they have left in the budget to make a freaky witch.
Yes.
This thing has now lived in people's minds for 23 years.
Right, yeah.
Maybe the Halloween costume they would have thrown on the PA wouldn't have that power.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and I think that there's meant to be quite a bit of ambiguity. The point of this is that it's meant to seem like it's real, and that like this weird freaky thing happened in the woods. We don't really know what it was. We have some footage. We know something happened, but we don't know what. And it's like, it's meant to be cyclical, like you were saying, like the idea that someone else would find this footage and want to go find out about the Blair Witch. So they would then go into the woods and the same thing would keep happening. Right, if you'd seen the Blair Witch in this footage, then you're kind of like, oh, well, I know what she looks like and she's scary and she killed these people, so let's not mess with it. And then there's no interest anymore.
Right.
So I think it's meant to be, even there is, like you said, some confirmation that she's real because you see Mike in the corner. Like, not necessarily. He could have just been afraid and standing in a corner. He could have been coerced into standing in a corner. Like, we don't know exactly what happened. So it's meant to be a little ambiguous.
But it does lock in pretty solidly with the lore we learned earlier.
Yes, right. So at the very least, the thing making him do this is familiar with that lore.
Right.
So, yeah.
Maybe a fun thing to wrap up with, that's really all I have to say about the movie. I really enjoyed it, and those are my little theories.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes I catch echoes in reverse.
Okay.
Where I really like a modern work of art, and then later I see its influences.
Yeah.
And maybe it demystifies it a little bit. It makes it look a little less original and disruptive and exciting.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that lineage, to see that larger sort of canon that is being furthered and advanced. I feel like I understand True Detective more after seeing this movie.
Because of all the sticks?
Previously, I had attributed Texas Chainsaw Massacre to a lot of the energy and setting and tone and color palette of True Detective. And I still think a lot of that is there. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
No one talks about the other ones.
I'm just making sure people know. Season 1.
I have 3 little comparisons that I wonder what you think of.
Okay.
The first one you tapped into immediately.
Sorry, are you going to spoil anything for True Detective?
I mean,
just
vaguely,
so people know.
Vaguely.
Okay.
Go watch it. It's the best thing ever made. Go watch it. So the first thing, like you said, is those stick figures. Where we see all of these little twig and twine sculptures.
Yeah.
That they're iconography without explanation.
Yes.
And so much of this movie, the things we stumble upon, the little figurines and sculptures and shit left outside the tent, are unexplained. But they're freaky because they shouldn't be there.
Yes.
And someone left them there on purpose. It's that intentionality thing.
Exactly. Because like the stick sculpture itself is not inherently scary. No. Like it's just a bundle of sticks. But it's clearly made by something that's not just the wind and animals walking by. Like someone made it and then someone put it there.
It's just the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
And when when Rust and Marty start finding these little sculptures at different crime scenes, it's that same power of suggestion. It's the idea that there's a bigger plan, that there is this intentionality that they don't understand
Things
at all.
are connected. It's not just random. Yeah.
There's also, I mean, the way that those things build up to a final confrontation with the villain, and this isn't really a spoiler, but that big confrontation with the villain is really not the point of True Detective.
No,
and it's certainly not the point here. Like, there's plenty of mythology never shown or explained, but it's still effective. You don't need to see the witch to get what's happening here.
Yeah. And if anything, I feel like the movie is about a group of friends falling apart more than it is about a witch.
And there's all this stuff in True Detective, the Yellow King, Carcosa, that like police sketch that they have up on the wall. You don't technically see any of those things, really.
Yeah.
You see little bits of iconography that might be, they feel like more like references or Easter eggs, but you don't see those things. And that's not the point. It doesn't make you feel unsatisfied or frustrated when the show ends, because it's just not about that. And I think that's another wonderful little magic trick where you cannot give the audience what you want, what you tell them to be looking for, and still leave them fulfilled.
Yeah.
That's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And both of these succeed at such a high level.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The second thing is you get a series of on-location interviews with the locals that builds up the mythology of these crimes that are happening and build up the fear. That's all I can think of. The first 10, 15 minutes of this, of Blair Witch, is them talking to the locals.
Yeah.
And once Marty and Rust find the case and they're looking for the right guy and they're following up with these little leads, you get all these vignettes of them in empty, dirty houses talking to people.
Yeah.
And that's how you build the fear and the legend, the mythos of the villain that they're going after.
Yeah.
And they're such static, simple scenes. I feel like there's definitely a format being borrowed from this film. The third thing's maybe the most fun. So in Blair Witch, you have the found footage.
Yeah.
Which is...
Hold on. I feel like I know what you're about to say. Is it comparing the framing with
Let me do it.
Okay.
So you get...
I was not prompted.
You get the found footage in Blair Witch.
Yeah.
The... What's the word? Not allegory. Analog in True Detective is the framing device of the interviews.
Yes.
On the cheap cameras.
Yes.
That set up the first 6 out of 8 episodes. You have this sort of wraparound framing device of Rust and Cole being individually, or Rust and Marty being individually interviewed.
Yes.
On these cheap homemade, consumer level cameras that are just propped up.
Yep.
And that frames the footage and the events and gives it structure.
Yes.
And it's edited in accordance with that sort of found footage. And Blair Witch was originally supposed to be the 90-ish minutes of found footage that we see in the final film with a documentary aftermath that was wound into the original structure.
Cool.
They filmed a lot of that footage with fake academics and all sorts of actors and to build out the lore and the aftermath, make it feel more real and impactful.
Like a full documentary and not just here's the footage.
It's like 45 minutes of extra footage. And because they ended up deciding that the film worked without that, they used all that footage as promotional material.
That's so smart.
And they released it as its own little short film. I think they tried to put it on TV.
I'd like to watch that.
It's like a bonus feature on the DVD now.
Cool.
But True Detective sort of pays off that original vision because you have the interviews, you have the found footage of them giving their separate interviews, and then you see the story eventually continue past that. And you have the aftermath. You have there is documentary sort of an angle to it when they're going through old newspapers and putting together case files. So it almost lives up to that original promise of Blair Witch with these other little nods along the way, with the iconography, with the way that you chase down the case and the mythology.
Yeah. And I think there's something, I don't know if I have this articulated fully yet, but in the story, I won't spoil anything, but the story that Rust and Marty are telling the detectives is not exactly the story that really happens. And we hear what they say, and then we see what really happens in the show's footage, right? When we see those scenes play out. And so it's about perspective and how you saw what happened and how you're sort of reframing what happened. And in Blair Witch, we're seeing, like I said earlier, we're seeing a lot of this from Heather's perspective because she's the one filming and her voice is closest to the camera. So it sounds like that's like our PO, like we're in Heather's POV for 98% of this movie. And so we're seeing things as she sees it and what she wants to focus on, because that's where she's pointing the camera. And then, but there are shots where we pull away, we see Heather from a distance, and we're seeing, and we're not seeing the whole picture, right? So it's not a direct correlation, but there's something in there about how the story is told. And I feel like the final product of this movie is the filmmaker's attempt to give us a, quote, neutral telling of this story.
Sure.
Like, because if they put it in a documentary, then there's a spin on it. We've talked about this before. Documentaries always have an agenda, even if they're trying to remain neutral. Like, they have a perspective they want us to focus on, and they spin things a certain way. And so by just presenting us with the footage, edited together, but presented as if it's just nothing's cut out, right? Then it's like this more neutral perspective. Like, so we get to see what really happened,
right?
You know,
it has its own inherent bias, but it's not being framed and edited later,
right? Yeah. I also think this is not related, but I don't know if they can make this movie now, because if they made this movie now, like, not even like all the found footage phenomenon, and like, I don't even mean about it feeling like people thinking it was real, like, that's not even what I mean, because we're in 2022 vlog culture, like TikTok vlogging, like everybody constantly documenting their lives. If you filmed this for 2022, it would feel like that, and it would be like, hey guys, welcome back. And it would be like there wouldn't be those weird in between moments, and it wouldn't feel as real, because when people vlog things now, it's very staged and very planned and very like meant to look natural and oh my gosh, not canny. What's that word?
Candid.
Thank you, candid. It's like meant to look natural and candid, like, oh, I just happened to, but like, it's often very planned out and like pre-designed. Right. So it would be a lot harder to do this movie now, I think. And I'm glad that it's not done now.
Yeah, I mean, we also have much better cell service.
There is
it's
that.
It's hard to genuinely get lost.
Right, because you have GPS.
Right.
Like, no one's using a paper map that you can throw in the river. Like, yeah.
Right. You can be geolocated.
And the cameras would be better quality, so it wouldn't be as grainy. It wouldn't be as, the
new iPhones literally have a function where if you're in an emergency, instead of using your normal cell coverage, you can use a satellite.
I mean, that's fucking awesome. Like, that's so cool.
So yeah, there's less possibility.
Yes. So yeah, there's like the period piece element to it also. But even just like the style in which we document things now is very different.
The way to do it would have to be like a live streamer.
Yeah, right. And I know that there have been movies like that. Like there was one.
Sucks.
Yeah, there was a movie that was made like to be like a Zoom call. Right. There's one called Unfriended or something with.
Don't care.
Yeah, but I'm not interested in that.
Nope.
So I just think this is. I mean, I said this the other day, that time between analog and digital, like that weird in between of the 90s and early 2000s is really interesting to me.
And it's such a colossal leap forward in the way technology in the works, in the way our society and human nature, the way our brains are wired now.
Yeah.
That this movie is a period piece.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't have smartphones in it.
Seriously.
Because technology changes everything about storytelling. It's so tough.
Yeah.
And that's why I like things to have minimal, if any, there's a reason The Witch is our favorite horror movie. It doesn't have to deal with any of this stuff, which means you have room for character.
Yeah. We were watching a director's commentary for The Haunting of Hill House last night, Mike Flanagan, who we love. And he was saying in the commentary that he hates cell phones, and sometimes he'll film things to be like period pieces just so he doesn't have to deal with phones.
Right.
Because they ruin horror. Like they make it so much harder when there are phones involved.
So that's why I thought Barbarian was so funny, because it dealt with all of that so well.
Yes, it did. I was thinking
if you haven't seen Barbarian, it's in some theaters and it's on HBO Max right now.
Yeah.
But the way the characters will use the flashlight on their phone is smart. The way they'll try to make calls or whatever.
Yes.
When you have a really hungry filmmaker like Zach Kreger, he's going to outsmart modern technology. And he does that beautifully.
Well, there's a scene where one of the characters leaves her phone like upstairs, and she can't get to it, so she can't. But it's
the door locks when she wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, and her phone is like, on the table.
But it's a lot of extra hurdles to jump through.
Yeah.
It's a lot of extra hoops to jump through just to tell a basic horror story. So I don't at all blame Flanagan for just making it a period piece.
I just think it wasn't even about how it makes it hard. I think he just like he doesn't like what they do to movies. They automatically cement them in a certain period of time, and they can make it, So I get it. Like it's the second you film the wrong iOS on your movie, like the second one a new one comes out, it looks dated and weird.
So here's a question to throw to you listeners. What do you think of found footage horror movies, and do you have any recommendations for us in this subgenre because we're relatively new to it? Maggie alluded to Hell House LLC earlier, which we watched after this, and it is genuinely one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
It really upset me.
There's not much to say about it. No. It's a group of, young people who set up a scary haunted house. Like that's the thing. They do that in different towns every year.
Yeah, that's their job.
So they set up one on some sort of shaky premises that they don't really have the rights to. And they're installing all of their props and all of their dummies and things to make it look all spooky and abandoned. And the way they freak you out, like the dummy's head is turned when the dummy's head doesn't turn, or it's just in a doorway when it's not supposed to be. And it's also found footage.
Yeah, because it's like they're like doing a documentary about the making of this haunted house. So.
It's incredibly effective.
Yeah, it was really scary.
By the end, I mean, the scene at the end, and there are scenes throughout, but everything in the last 20 minutes is some of the smartest, scariest stuff I have ever seen in horror.
Yeah, that movie was freaky.
So if you have any recommendations for us within the world of found footage horror, we are Second Breakfast Pod everywhere. You can email us at Gmail. You can find us on Substack and comment on the post for Blair Witch episode that will be up today if you're listening to this. We also have exclusive horror episodes up there. We just talked about Pearl, which was amazing. I actually wrote about Barbarian last month.
You did an exclusive post about Barbarian.
And you can also support the show. If you go for the free tier, you'll get all the episodes sent right to your mailbox with some little bonus content, behind the scenes stuff. And for $5 a month, you will get bonus content, bonus episodes, all sorts of fun stuff. We're also on TikTok, Instagram, and what else did I forget? YouTube.
That's right,
We're on YouTube with daily content there. And we'll be back on Friday to talk about The Witcher, I believe. Is that this Friday?
Yes. I believe so.
We're trying to record a little early. Yeah,
Witcher's on Friday.
That'll be Baptism of Fire, Chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very excited. Ooh. That book's been fantastic so
It's
far.
been really great.
Cool.
All right, well, happy Election Day.
Yeah.
Vote for Al Gore.
Team Nader.
Oh, God. All right, bye.